Do you believe there are countries in the world that offer free housing, and some that even provide more than $90,000 USD to help you move there and live? It sounds unreal, and if you feel skeptical, you're absolutely right. Because the truth is, these programs do exist, just not in the way the internet usually tells the story. No country simply hands you the keys to a house or wires cash into your bank account for everyone. Instead, governments and local regions are doing something far more practical, sharing the biggest cost of later life, especially housing, to attract new residents, revive villages, and keep communities from disappearing. In this video, we're going to be direct, no sugarcoating. Which places truly offer near-free housing? Which places provide financial support of more than $90,000 in fully legal forms? And most importantly, whether American retirees are actually a good fit. Just 5 real countries, with real numbers, where your retirement money can go much further than it can in the United States. If you've ever asked yourself, is there a place where I don't have to worry about housing costs for the rest of my life? Then keep watching. Dream it. Pack it. Go. 5. Ireland. A quiet but solid retirement choice for Americans. If there is one honest way to describe Ireland for American retirees, it is this: a place that doesn't show off, doesn't make unrealistic promises, but directly addresses the biggest concern of later life: long-term stability. Ireland does not enter the retirement conversation with slogans like free or monthly subsidies. It begins with a very practical question. Do you need a stable home and a life with peace of mind? Many Americans did everything right for 40 years. They worked consistently, paid taxes, bought homes, raised children, and believed retirement would be lighter. Reality turned out differently. Rents rose, property taxes climbed. Healthcare costs became unpredictable. The fear is no longer running out of money today, but living longer than expected and exhausting resources. Ireland looks directly at that problem and chooses a solution that is quiet but concrete. In rural areas and remote islands of Ireland, thousands of homes have been left vacant as populations declined. Instead of letting them deteriorate, the government allows newcomers to take them over at low cost and provides substantial financial support for renovations. In qualifying cases, total support can reach nearly $90,000 USD. What's important to understand is that this is not cash for spending, but resources to turn an old house into a safe, warm, long-term home. For Americans, that amount equals many years of rent. When invested into a home, it becomes the foundation for 10 or 15 years of stability. There is a very typical example of how Ireland approaches retirees. A retired American couple, who previously lived in the U.S. Midwest, decided to move to a small island off Ireland's western coast. They weren't looking for handouts, but for a place where they could live calmly on their retirement income. The home they took over was an old stone house that had been vacant for many years. The purchase price was almost symbolic, but the renovation costs were not small. Instead of forcing them to shoulder everything themselves, local authorities covered most of the renovation expenses: structural reinforcement, heating systems, plumbing, electrical work, and insulation. When added up, the total value of this support was equivalent to nearly $100,000 US. What matters is that they did not receive cash, and there were no monthly checks. What they received was a home they could live in long-term. After the renovations were completed, their monthly living costs dropped to a level that Social Security could comfortably cover, without heavily drawing down their savings. More importantly, they no longer carried the fear of, what if we live another 10 or 15 years? For them, Ireland was not a place that gave money, but a place that solved the biggest problem of old age: having stable housing for the rest of life. When housing costs, the largest expense in later life, are resolved, every other calculation becomes lighter. Local food is simple but high quality. The pace of life is slow. Communities are small, where neighbors know one another. By avoiding expensive cities like Dublin, the cost of living in areas suited to these programs stays within a range American retirees can control. Total living costs: $1,900 to $2,300 USD per month for a couple. This level already includes food, utilities, basic transportation, and routine health care. Provided you live in rural areas or remote islands, not an expensive urban lifestyle. In terms of residency, Ireland is one of the most manageable destinations for Americans. English is the primary language. The culture is friendly and respectful toward older people. Under the financially independent residency pathway, you don't need massive investment or to start a business. The core requirement is proving that you can support yourself and will not become a burden on the welfare system. Healthcare is a major advantage. Ireland isn't perfect, but its public-private hybrid system offers something Americans rarely have at home: cost, peace of mind. Medical services are transparently priced. Private insurance is at a level that many Americans who once paid thousands of dollars a year will find far more comfortable. Most importantly, you don't live with the fear that a single emergency will derail your entire retirement plan. Ireland is not for everyone. Cloudy, rainy weather doesn't suit those who need year-round sunshine. Areas with the strongest support are often quiet and sometimes quite isolated, requiring you to proactively integrate into the community. Housing support also comes with long-term commitments: renovating the home, patience with paperwork, and staying for the long haul. This is not a place to try it out, but a place for those who have thought it through. But that very honesty is what makes Ireland worth considering. They don't promise to make you rich. They share costs in exchange for real commitment. For many American retirees, those who value safety, stability, reasonable health care, and a home that truly belongs to them, Ireland is a quiet but solid choice, where later life can unfold more peacefully, not through grand promises, but through durable solutions. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Here, we don't sell dreams. We share real options. 4.8 Japan, where a small budget can still deliver a full life. What sets Japan apart from every familiar American retirement model isn't scenery or culture, but the final number each month. In rural Japan, when housing is largely resolved through abandoned homes, IKEA, many Americans encounter a strange new calculation for the first time. If I only need about $1,500 a month to live, why am I still afraid? Let's be direct. For an American retiree living on Social Security, $1,500 a month in the US usually covers rent alone. But in Japan, if you live in a small town or rural area, exactly where IKEA exists, but $200 and $600 a month covers your entire life, not just part of it. The difference starts with housing. When you no longer pay monthly rent, or only carry minimal maintenance costs for a home purchased for nearly nothing, the entire financial structure of later life changes. There's no longer anxiety about how much is housing this month, no fear of sudden increases. Housing stops being a burden. It becomes the foundation. From that foundation, every other expense becomes easier to manage. Food in Japan is a major surprise for Americans. Fresh, safe, high quality, and not something that forces financial strain. Living simply, cooking at home, food costs are often far lower than in the US, without sacrificing health. Transportation is the next positive shock. In many parts of Japan, Trains and buses run so precisely that owning a car is no longer a necessity. When you're no longer paying for insurance, fuel, maintenance, and vehicle taxes, your monthly budget becomes noticeably lighter. And for retirees, not having to drive every day is also a mental relief. Healthcare is where the math becomes most convincing. In the US, a health event can trigger unpredictable bills. In Japan, healthcare is transparent, capped, and not a gamble. When you add everything together, near zero housing costs, reasonable food expenses, efficient transportation, and controlled healthcare, the final picture is very clear. The real cost of living for a retiree in rural Japan falls in the range of $1,200 to $1,600 per month. The price you pay isn't financial, but cultural difference, language barriers, and a slower, quieter pace of life than American suburbs. Japan doesn't try to make you comfortable immediately, but in return, it offers something rare: a simple, structured, and predictable life. And if Japan had to be summed up in one sentence for American retirees, it would be this: in the US, $1,500 is a worry that hasn't even begun. In Japan, $1,500 is a life already accounted for. 3. Italy, where time slows down and retirement income finally feels sufficient. If Ireland offers a sense of stability and Japan represents a restructuring of how life is lived, then Italy touches something very different in the psychology of American retirees. I've worked my whole life. Now I want to live, not just exist. Italy doesn't persuade with bold promises. What it offers is time. Time to eat more slowly, talk longer, and live without checking a bank statement every morning. Italy starts from a very blunt reality. Many small villages are gradually emptying out. Young people leave, communities age, and stone houses that once formed the center of daily life are left behind. Instead of hiding this, Italy turns it into a clear invitation. If you're willing to come live here, we'll help you get started. Symbolic price homes aren't a marketing trick. They're Italy's way of saying that housing shouldn't be the biggest barrier in old age. But Italy's real appeal to American retirees lies in the overall cost of living structure. When you leave Milan or Rome and step into the south or smaller towns, the math changes noticeably. This isn't a tight-belt lifestyle, but a life that feels complete in the true Mediterranean sense. Housing is the decisive factor. When you're no longer paying US-level rent, or only carrying modest costs for taxes and maintenance, the budget becomes manageable. From there, the way you spend money changes as well. In Italy, eating well doesn't mean eating expensively. Local food is fresh, simple, and affordable when you shop the way locals do. Meals stop being a source of financial stress and become part of daily pleasure. Healthcare is a point where many Americans finally exhale. Italy's public healthcare system is highly regarded, and out-of-pocket costs are far lower than in the United States. More importantly, seeing a doctor doesn't come with the fear of massive bills. When health is no longer a financial threat, a retiree's mindset naturally becomes lighter. Italy also offers a psychological advantage that's hard to measure in money: a culture that values older people. In small towns, the elderly are a natural presence in cafes, town squares, and long, unhurried conversations. For Americans who spent years in quiet but isolating suburbs, this sense of community can be powerful. You don't need special programs to stay busy. You simply live, go outside, and become part of the shared rhythm of life. Of course, Italy comes with trade-offs. Bureaucracy moves more slowly than in the US. Language can be a barrier in many areas, and low-cost homes often need repairs, requiring patience. Italy doesn't promise that everything will be easy. but it gives you time for things to become right. With total living costs in the range of $1,300 to $1,900 per month, many Americans realize that Social Security is no longer not enough, but becomes the foundation for a truly lived life. Not luxurious, not rushed, but rich in depth. In Italy, old age isn't compressed to fit the budget. The budget is stretched to fit life. Greece, where later life is lived outdoors, not behind closed doors. If Italy is the art of slow living and Japan is disciplined minimalism, then Greece offers American retirees something very different: a life that happens outside four walls. In Greece, old age isn't pushed indoors, shrunk around a television or a stack of bills. It unfolds in town squares, cafes, harbors, and under the Mediterranean sun, where people meet not for a purpose, but for presence. Greece enters this list, not because of grand promises. In fact, much of the online talk about being paid to move to Greece has been exaggerated. What matters here is the underlying reality. Some islands and very small towns have tried to offer housing support and modest living assistance to keep communities from disappearing. These are not nationwide policies, not meant for the masses, and not long-term guarantees. But from these small pieces, a larger picture emerges. Greece is a place with low living costs, an ideal climate, and a strong communal culture, especially suited to Americans who want to live simply, close to people, and close to nature. What allows American retirees to breathe in Greece is, first and foremost, the pace of life. No rush, no pressure. In coastal towns and small islands, days are shaped more by sunlight than by schedules. Older people can sit in cafes for hours without being seen as wasting time. For those accustomed to quiet but isolating American suburbs, Greece offers the feeling of being seen and of belonging. In terms of cost, Greece is one of the most accessible places in Europe if you stay away from major tourist hubs. In Athens, prices have risen, but once you move outside the city center or head to smaller towns and lesser-visited islands, the math changes significantly. Total living costs in Greece for a couple run about $1,600 to $2,000 USD per month for a comfortable, non-luxury life. This figure covers everyday living: food, utilities, transportation, and basic health care, as long as you're not renting in peak tourist areas. Housing in Greece is not free in the literal sense, but it is inexpensive and flexible in low-population regions. Long-term rentals in small towns or lesser-known islands can be far cheaper than in the U.S., with much less pressure from sudden price spikes. When housing costs stop squeezing you, the rest of the budget becomes far easier to manage. Mediterranean food, vegetables, fish, olive oil, is not only healthy but also affordable when you eat the way locals do. Healthcare in Greece isn't perfect, but it is sufficient and reasonable for retirement living. In cities and larger islands, medical services adequately cover basic needs. Out-of-pocket costs are far lower than in the United States. On smaller islands, services can be limited, which is why many people choose to live near regional centers or islands with hospitals. For Americans, the key point is this: healthcare is no longer a constant financial threat. Greece also comes with trade-offs that need to be stated clearly. Small islands can feel isolated in winter. Public services move slowly. Bureaucracy isn't always smooth. Stories about free houses and monthly payments, if they exist at all, are extremely limited and not meant for the general public. Greece is not a place to rely on subsidies. It's a place to lower costs and raise quality of life, if you're willing to adapt. For American retirees, Greece is best suited to those who value sunshine, community, and outdoor living over American-style conveniences. This isn't a place to optimize every dollar. It's a place to stretch time. When total monthly costs fall in the range of $200 to $1,500, Social Security stops being a source of shortfall anxiety and becomes the foundation for a life with rhythm, human connection, and room to breathe. In Greece, old age isn't shrunk. It's brought into the light. 1. Spain, where retirement income isn't compressed and life still has room to breathe. For many American retirees, Spain isn't the cheapest option in Europe, but it may be the easiest place to live. Spain doesn't promise free housing or cash subsidies. What it offers is a sustainable reality. Living costs low enough for Social Security to keep up, and a pace of life rich enough that retirement doesn't have to be compressed by budget limits. What sets Spain apart is balance. When you leave Madrid or Barcelona and choose regions like Valencia, Andalusia, or the Costa Blanca, the math becomes very clear. Real total living costs for a couple, around $7,900 to $2,300 USD per month, are sufficient for a comfortable, non-luxury life. This figure covers core needs: housing, food, transportation, and basic health care, as long as you live at a local pace, not a tourist one. Housing is the key to this equation. Spain doesn't give away homes, but long-term rentals are stable and predictable in mid-sized cities and small towns. Without facing sudden US-style rent spikes, retirees can budget calmly. That stability allows you to spend for living, not for fear, and that difference is enormous on a psychological level. Food in Spain is where many Americans completely rethink the idea of cost. Here, eating well doesn't mean eating expensively. Local food is fresh, abundant, and affordable when you shop the way residents do. Cafes, plazas, and outdoor meals aren't an occasional luxury, but part of everyday life. For retirees, this matters more than money. It pulls you out of four walls and into the community. Healthcare is another reason Spain consistently appears on retirement lists. The public healthcare system is highly regarded, and private health insurance is affordable compared to the United States. Most importantly, it's predictable. Medical care doesn't come with the fear of bills that could shatter a retirement plan. When health is no longer a financial unknown, the way you live changes. You plan for life, not for risk. Spain is also one of the places with a large, long-established expatriate community. For Americans who don't want to feel isolated, this is a very real advantage. You can integrate gradually, learn the language at your own pace, and still have a social network to lean on. The transition becomes gentler, not a start from zero. Of course, Spain has trade-offs. Residency procedures require proof of financial means and comprehensive health insurance. In many areas, English isn't widely spoken, which demands patience. Stories about free housing with income attached, if they exist, are limited to local or private initiatives, not national policy. Spain doesn't pay you to move there. It does something more practical. It keeps living costs at a level retirement income can keep up with, and structures daily life so you don't need to spend much to live well. That's why Spain is best suited for American retirees who want a full life within a realistic budget. When total monthly costs fall in the range of $400 to $800, Social Security stops feeling like a tight constraint. It becomes the foundation for a life with sunshine, people, movement, and room to breathe. The truth is, no country pays you to retire just for existing. But there is another truth that's talked about far less. There are places willing to share the biggest costs of later life, if you're willing to live genuinely, reside genuinely, and commit genuinely. Housing, healthcare, and everyday living costs are the three things Americans worry about most as they age. And that's exactly where the countries we've discussed make a difference. Not through grand promises, but through very concrete solutions. Retiring abroad isn't about escaping the United States. It's about giving yourself more options. You may never move, but simply knowing that you have options is already a form of relief. If your retirement income can go further, if healthcare costs no longer keep you awake at night, and if old age can unfold with calm instead of constant worry, then that isn't a dream. It's a plan. And the best plan for later life always begins with accurate information and your own decision.